Welcome to the Motoring Podcast, a Volkswagen ID.3 special edition. Hello, I'm Alan.
Hello, I'm Andrew. A Volkswagen ID.3. So, what is this, Alan? Is this the future?
Yes, they've all got a dot in the middle. This is, I've forgotten the correct name for it. It's Car 2.0, I think, isn't it? I think it possibly is the future, or at least it's the start of the future.
Okay.
Obviously, we know all about Volkswagen and some of its challenges with internal combustion engines over the last few years. And so the ID.3 was on its way anyway, but then, of course, it appeared on the scene. It is essentially a C-segment hatchback, but an electric one. So it runs on a different platform from the Golf.
Mm-hmm.
It runs alongside the Golf. The Golf is available these days with internal combustion engines and with hybrid and plug-in hybrid. And the ID.3 is available with pure electric.
So this was their first dedicated EV platform?
Yes, it
Okay.
was. I believe that to be the case, yes.
Right.
Millard, etc.
Okay, so you had this for a week, right?
So I had this for a week.
What's the actual one you had?
So, yes. This is where it becomes complicated.
Okay.
Because the one I had was a specification called an ID.3 Life Pure Performance, 45 kilowatt hour, 150 PS.
Tell you what, the person who knows someone on the board at VW who makes the badges for the back of cars must be so rich.
The thing is, they don't badge any of them. Yeah, I mean, it's quite impressive. So this is pretty much the bottom of the range.
Okay, so this is the entry point.
This is basically the entry point. The thing is, this one, now, where it's complicated is that this is a model that's only actually available from stock. So you cannot go out and configure it on the configurator.
Oh, okay.
So you can't actually match this and find out exactly how much it costs and stuff if you don't happen to have the detailed specs, which I don't. The closest I got was the 58 kilowatt hour Pro Performance 204 PS was about as close as it got. And as far as costs and stuff go, that comes in at about £32,255 on the road, recommended retail price before any plug-in grants or anything like that. So that's before grant is taken off.
Okay.
All I can say is mine must have been cheaper than that, so it's coming in around the £30,000 mark.
Right, okay. So that would get the plug-in grant.
It would still get the plug-in grant.
Yeah.
Still qualify.
Okay.
And how it came was pretty much as basic as it comes. Let me explain the rest of the range, and then we'll talk a little bit about what was actually fitted. The ID.3 range itself, it starts with Life. It's one of these ones where there's a grid. There must be somebody must have sat down and sort of filled out a matrix of what you can have. So you've got four spec levels, pardon me. You've got Life, you've got Family, you've got Max, and you've got Tour.
So there's something above Max, okay.
Yeah, so yeah, there's a higher price above Max. So you can go from where mine is. So mine was around about £30,000, range of about of just under 200 miles, and you can go right the way up to a Tour 77 kilowatt hour. So that's getting on for, it's over 1.5 times the battery that mine had. 204 metric horses of output, and coming in at 338 miles on the WLTP. And that'll hit you £40,535 before you add anything else to it.
Okay, right.
So it's quite a wide range
Yeah.
of what is essentially the same car and looks almost identical, but then apart, but there's a bigger battery inside. There's a more powerful motor, or the motor is allowed to use more power. It's quite comprehensive and wide range.
Okay.
Basically, is what I'm trying to tell you there. And mine on Life, in traditional Volkswagen fashion, it is not exactly laden with kit and gear.
Okay.
Mine, for example, had alloy wheels. Alloy wheels are an option on the Life spec.
Okay.
I think they're an option on Family as well. I can't remember straight off, but certainly on Life, alloy wheels are an option. You get Steelies and very aerodynamic wheel covers. But if you want the rather nice 19-inch alloy wheels, then they cost £650 fitted.
Okay.
And they're the same size as the Steelies, by the way, so you're not gaining anything extra like that. But they're supposedly not quite as, not quite as aero. And they're definitely more expensive. And of course, you've got to try and make it under the grant prices these days. Yeah. So that was wheels, which you don't normally cover first. The other thing to cover is options. And mine was Moonstone. Have I got it right? Hang on. Moonstone Grey Flat. There we are. Moonstone Grey, which is grey. I mean, it is grey. It cannot be described as any color other than grey. It is just.
Is it grey. That undercoaty grey?
It's the one that looks like they've forgotten to actually paint it. Yes.
Okay. Right.
Yes,
we all know what you mean now. Then. Yep.
Yeah. So there's a number of colors that you can get on top of that. So there's Glacier White, Metallic. There is King's Red, Metallic. Now you will not be surprised to hear that is white and then red. There's Maneka Turquoise, Metallic. So that's the one that you see quite a lot of the first edition.
Oh, yeah.
Ones with that color. It's a bit 80s shell suit.
Yes.
Very much of that. It actually always reminds me of the concept car that was a diesel electric hybrid that they showed on Tomorrow's World doing Parallel Park. Forgotten the name of the concept car right now. Somebody will chime in. Everybody will know what I mean. There's also Manganese Grey Metallic, which is grey but metallic. There is Scale Silver Metallic, which is silver. And there's the color that I like the best of the lot, which is Stonewashed Blue Metallic, which is sort of pale stonewash jeans color. But all of those, every single one of the colors I've just listed, is £665. Straight up, if you want a color,
steep.
It's quite steep. There's quite a lot of surface to cover, but yeah. So yeah, if you don't want grey, £665, or if you don't want flat grey, you can even end up with multicolored grey, with metallic grey for £665.
Okie doke.
I mean, I say most things are an option, and then actually, once you get down to it, it's not so badly spec'd. But we'll talk about that in a little bit, I'm sure.
Okay, well, do you want to try and run us through what it looks like?
Well, it looks like a box. It is not an inspiring vehicle to look at. It is not ugly. Let's be completely clear here. This is not an ugly vehicle.
It's a very neutral design.
Well, I don't think that the flat grey really has helped it.
No.
But it is incredibly neutral. Nobody will be offended by an ID.3.
No.
Similarly, nobody's going to go, wow, that's a nice thing to look at.
I think you'd be struggling to get overexcited.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's okay. It's not bad. The one thing it does remind me of, though, watch me never, ever receive another press car from Volkswagen ever again, is the fact that, some companies that put out those kind of flat folding, there's a kind of plan of the car.
Yeah.
And your kids can color it in, right? And then you cut it out and you get the tabs and you fold the tabs around.
Yes.
This was the thing that really struck me about having this for a week. You fold the tabs around and then it never quite looks like a car. So if you do one of there's a Mark 1 Yaris T-Sport or Vitz RS one you can get. And it's great and everything. And it kind of looks like the car when it's all out. But whenever you fold it, because you can't get the compound curves.
Yeah.
It's always just like, it looks like the car from the side, but from the front, everything looks a bit sort of smushed. As if it's been sort of slapped, because it's not that curve. All the edges are sharp and stuff.
Yeah.
That's what the ID.3 is like.
Out of interest.
Like somebody drew it from one angle, drew it from another angle, but never really looked at the curves of the corners and stuff.
Yeah.
But you know what? But the plus side of that is phenomenally practical.
It comes across as the design is fine.
It's fine. It is.
Yeah.
The design is fine. And I think that's a fair way to put it. And I feel like I'm being really a bit snobby about that. But it is. It's
But this
fine.
is an important car for Volkswagen. This is a very important car. This is the start of their new direction.
Yes, but it also had to be done quite quickly, remember.
Yeah. Quick question. Up the front of the bonnet, about 2/3 of the way up, but also coming back down from the windscreen, the bottom of the windscreen.
There is a big black gloss panel.
What is that just to break up the...
I would imagine that one of our automotive designer friends will say that it's to visually lower the top of the bonnet and to make it look as if the windscreen goes much further down.
But it sticks up.
It does. I'm sure that'll be for aero, but most people don't notice that. You just sort of look. I know we're looking at a picture of it from the front 3/4.
Yeah.
Which I took. Yeah.
No, but I have noticed it when I've gone past them in car parks and stuff like that.
I hadn't really noticed it until I was looking at photos, to be honest.
Okay.
I hadn't really noticed it. I don't know if it's just to do aero and to hide the wiper blades, or if it's... but I would imagine that it's there to visually reduce the bulk of and the height of the bonnet.
Okay.
So from the outside, not wonderfully exciting. It's fine.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to be offended by it in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. No, that looks fine. What about the inside then?
Yeah, pretty much the same. So the
it's
don't laugh at your own jokes, Alan.
No, it's poor form.
So the inside, let's start at the back, as we usually do on the podcast here. There is really quite a large, flat-floored, sheer-sided boot. It has lots of space in it. It is tall. It is wide. It is regular. It doesn't really do anything wrong as far as boots go.
Okay.
Now, some people who are fussy about these things might say that it would be nicer if the curry hooks were a bit better, because they are of the molded in variety. But on the other hand, they're nice and high, so at least anything you suspend from them is going to stay suspended from them.
Okay.
And from that point of view, that worked just great. There's no real undercroft here. There's lots of battery and other stuff storage, but no real undercroft under the boot.
So if you're going out and you are taking your cables with you, a charging cable, that's just sat in the boot.
Basically, yes, it was just sat in the boot.
Okay.
From memory, there were Velcro-y bits on the bottom of the bag, so it didn't slide around.
Okay.
Yes, on the pictures I've got here, it's very much like that. It's not the greatest quality of coverings in the boot, but it's just fine. It's not, if you're not a sort of fussy mojo-y type person, then you're probably never really going to notice. But you're never going to go, ooh, isn't that nice? It's just boot space.
Okay.
It works, and it works just fine for that. No, it's good. It's really big, really regular. You can actually fit lots and lots of stuff in it. Super practical.
Good.
Moving forward to the back seats, I'd say it's like 2 2/3 to 2 3/4 seater in the back. They are relatively flat. I mean, there is a slight hump for the middle seat, but not a lot. No more than 1.5 inches or so. And all of the seats, the seats are broad and quite square. They're not heavily sculpted or anything like that at all. No shoulder issues. You know how sometimes if you're at the outside when there's 3 people in the car, you get kind of squished against the door and you end up leaning your head over. Well, that boxiness that I was making fun of when I talked about the outside, fantastically practical.
Okay.
One other thing to say about the back, there's 2 reading lights up in the middle, so even at night and stuff, whenever you open the doors, it's not quite Honda HR-V level of pleasant illumination, but it's pretty darn good, okay?
Okay.
It is excellent there. Also, so there's no, obviously, EV, you sit above the battery pack, so there is no floor hump.
Okay.
That's perceptible at all. Middle passengers not having any issues with that kind of thing either.
Good. Is there any charging things for the rear passengers?
Yes, there are 2 USB-C ports in the back of the sort of central binnacle where it comes back into the rear. So there's 2 USB-C ports down there.
Excellent.
It's little door cubbies. They're not hugely huge, but there are little door cubbies on both sides. This level of spec, then there is no privacy glass or anything, so lots of light getting in to illuminate the grey. There is grey cloth with patterned grey cloth inserts. It's very much lower end of a Volkswagen spec range. The cloth is hard wearing, rugged, etc. It's going to last longer than many South American countries.
So what's it like up front then?
It's really quite spacious up front. One of the things that's quite surprising whenever you are in front are the really comfortable, again, that kind of hard-wearing, no-nonsense captain's chairs. So each side, this is almost an MPV in disguise, especially with its sort of monospace style body. Front, really comfortable front seats. They're not exactly the most supportive things in the world. But on the other hand, you don't have to climb over the bolsters to get in and out. Obviously, they're manual, spec, but I find them really, really comfortable. One thing you do get is each front seat has its own individual armrest in the middle above the central binnacle.
Nice.
And that's quite nice because it's adjustable as well.
I do like that.
And frankly, there's not really much for your left arm to do in this car. You're not snicking your way through a
holding the steering wheel.
6-speed box. Yeah, you can hold. Basically, it's for holding the steering wheel, and you can do that quite happily with your left arm resting on an armrest. If you're on the motorway, there's that, and there's quite a lot of space. And one of the reasons there's quite a lot of space is there's not really a lot else up the front. Okay, you are never going to feel threatened and overpowered by the number of dashboard buttons in this car. Let's try and channel the spirit of Andrew and give you a button by button account.
That's what people tune in for.
Is it really?
The masochist.
I have the ability to argue back with you, and I feel I'm suffering it. Anyway, steering wheel, 3-spoke steering wheel. It's got quasi buttony haptic buttons on it, but they're all illuminated. They're all easy to find. They all work well. Left-hand side, all the stuff for the adaptive cruise control, because yes, even on stripper spec, there's still adaptive cruise control, emergency braking, etc., etc. On the right-hand side, then it's for working your way through the menus, through any menus on the screen, and also working the entertainment. So your volume, you're skipping back and forth. So the right-hand side is allows you to swap between views on the, I can't call it a dash panel. What do I call it?
Screens.
On the binnacle, the little mini binnacle screen thing in front of you. It lets you skip between the views, and then sort of top left on that spoke is voice control and things. And then everything else is for up, down, and volume and okay and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Stalks do what stalks do. They're standard Volkswagen in their behavior. So indicators on the left, obviously, lights and wipers on the right. And then it gets kind of convoluted with the number of presses and pushes backwards and forwards to work rear wipers and wipers and stuff like that. Obviously, auto wipers as well.
Mm-hmm.
In front of that is the binnacle. Now, the binnacle is really quite a small screen. It's maybe about 7 or 8 inches across diagonally, and it really is sort of minimum viable instrument binnacle. It's not quite 2CV, but it's getting there.
But then it doesn't need to tell you much.
Well, exactly that. So it gives you the speed. It tells you if you've got any doors are open. So the speed's in the middle by default, and then on the left is your lane keeping assist and your cruise control. Display shows there, and on the right hand side it shows what's coming up next on the sat nav if you're using the built-in sat nav.
Okay.
And if you're using CarPlay as well, it comes up there too, which is really nice touch.
All right.
Just off to the right and kind of sticking out to the right is your drive selector. So there's no lever in the middle or anything, or no sets of buttons. It's a kind of knob type selector setup. If you've been the BMW i3, it's similar, where you kind of turn it away from you, the top away from you, to select drive and to select the brake mode. So extra regen. You turn it towards you to put it back into neutral, and then towards you again to put it back into reverse.
Okay.
So really very, very simple.
It's maybe just the picture that you've taken and with your camera, but that does look quite a distance away.
It's not. It's just that the binnacle is very small. It's actually really nicely positioned. A lot of it's the angle. It's nicely positioned, so you can take your right hand off the steering wheel and turn.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's really convenient. It's really handy. It's there.
Well, that's good to know. Right. Thank you.
Just to the left of the binnacle, between the binnacle and the sort of main screen in the middle, there is, way forward on the dashboard, a small hexagonal panel of buttons which I never needed to touch.
Okay.
So they're stuff like turning the lights on and auto lights on, and for the lighting related things. Those are about as close as you get to a physical button in this car. And I never touched them. I never needed to touch them.
Right.
But there is a small panel just there. Pretty much everything else is controlled via the sort of touch screen in the middle. And this, I know, is a source of some consternation between some. I actually found the nav system to be the general operating system to be pretty good once you were going.
Okay.
I should really talk about this later, shouldn't I? I should really talk about this in technology, but it's pretty good. But otherwise, when we're talking about the dashboard, so I'll describe that more. I actually found it quite easy to use and relatively easy to get to the controls that I needed to control.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, underneath that, there are some absolute sort of touch panel areas on either side. So you can put the temperature up and down, or each side it's dual zone climate control. And at each side, there's up and down, there's the blue and red buttons. And then in the middle, there's volume up and volume down as well, depending on which side you press of a big wide button in the middle. This was about the only control that gave me any trouble in this car. And I'll tell you what it was. It mainly happened at night, and it was when I wanted to touch the touch screen. And so I'm in the habit, when I'm touching touchscreen with my left hand, of balancing my left thumb on the ridge at the bottom of a screen to hold my hand steady.
Okay.
So that I'm not doing the whole pin the tail on the donkey, arms bouncing up and down on crummy roads and stuff. So I sort of rest the thumb and then press with the finger. And that works for me. I don't really find touch screens to be overly irritating. I prefer physical buttons in many cases, but that's my workaround. The trouble was, in the dark, I didn't really feel that these were illuminated at all. And so what I'd do is I would accidentally put my thumb on them, and I would make volumes go soaring up or volumes go soaring down, or change the temperature with my thumb as I tried to touch the touch screen. And that, of course, by doing that, it then changed what was showing on the touch screen. So yeah, I think that if you've got more than a week,
distracting.
You'd get used to it. I think if you're there for doing it, had it for more than a week, you'd get used to it. But in a week, it was like, oh damn, I've done it again. It was quite annoying. These things happen. It was not the end of the earth. Absolutely not a deal breaker with it. But given some of the horror stories I'd heard, I actually didn't have an issue with that at all.
Well, I'm glad the software wasn't a total pain behind for you in any way.
We'll talk a bit more about it later on, but it wasn't a total pain in the behind. There you go. That's what you need to know.
Okay.
Below that, there's some other buttons for things like hurried screen defrost and hazard lights and stuff like that. So some other minor buttons. Air vents, and then right down at the bottom, there's a little net mounted vertically. I don't know what you put in there. Because it's out of reach. Whenever you're in the car, it's out of reach. So I'd maybe keep a windscreen scraper or something in there.
Right.
Because it's something that I'm not going to, because you can't reach it if you're driving.
Mm-hmm.
Back from that, central sort of bit between the seats. 2 Mahusive cup holders up front with little mechanical cup retainers.
Yep.
Can fit a bottle of wine in each one should you need to.
Oh, excellent.
If it needs, wants, desires. And behind that, there's a bigger cubby with a slidey bit. And it's got a couple of USB-C, couple more USB-C slots, ports in there, and some space for stuff.
Okay.
I can't remember if there was a 12-volt port in there or not. The cubby further back has a slidey top over it as well. And then, of course, you can fold down your armrests. One thing I will say about the interior and in the front is the plastics. Now, I know we make fun of these some hard plastics world. I did find the plastics, particularly on the doors and stuff, where where you do touch them, and it is somewhere where it's a very relaxing car to drive. So maybe my elbow ended up on the window bit. But I did find there more of, I would more expect to find, Volkswagen such a great reputation for interior quality from the Golf and all that stuff. I will say that when you moved away from the main touch surfaces, so the steering wheel, the drive selector, the touchscreeny zones, that everything was a bit scratchy. It was a bit more, how do I put this? It was a bit more like I'd find it in a Caddy small van than I would find in a Golf.
Okay.
As far as expectation goes. It could be because of this spec level. I'm not sure it was, but it could be because of this spec level, and that would be it. I'm trying not to go down the some hard plastics route. One other thing quickly to mention while you're in the front, lots of space thing. The bottom of the windscreen is some considerable distance away.
I was going to ask again. I was looking in the picture and I'm going, that seems Mark 1 Espace distance away.
Well, it's funny you should say it, because I was about to say, have you ever been to Renault Espace? That's what it is. It is getting on for Mark 1 Renault Espace distance away. What they have done at the bottom of the windscreen, though, and I really like this, is there's something called the ID light. Okay, now, let's move past marketing. Let me explain to you what it is and what it does. I think it's really cool, but I'm a big kid. So there is actually a row of LEDs, and they're really nicely hidden because you can't see them when they're off. And they go the width of the bottom of the windscreen. They can show in multiple colors and things. But when you get in and you turn it on, and I didn't notice it to start with, it does a whole sort of kit thing. It goes, woo, and does a little animation stuff. And obviously it does it on the animation on the screens because, hey, we're used to that now, and there are screens, and so you can do it. So it does a little sort of animaty thing, and if you press the voice control thing, it sort of goes boom, bit like, Siri or whatever, and hello, Michael, Knight Rider type thing. But as well as that, if you're using the Volkswagen SatNav, then as you're coming up to junctions, sure, you've got the icons on the screen if you want, you've got the icons on the little binnacle if you want, but it also does this kind of subtle swoosh thing from the middle to the direction that you're coming up to turning. It's not predicted on the screen, and this model, there's no on-screen display. So I know that a higher models of ID.3, then it has really quite a large, really quite a clever head-up display, which incorporates augmented reality to display arrows pointing which way you should be going. This doesn't, but it has the ID light, which does similar.
Right.
So as you're coming, and it's really helpful because you don't have to look at a screen for the sat-nav direction. You're coming up to the junction and you just see this thing at the bottom of your vision, and it just moves to the right, and it's like, oh, right, okay, so I'm turning down this one. It worked really nicely done. Other thing I really liked is when you plug it into charge, it acts like a sort of battery level indicator. When I was really low at one point, I plugged into a 100 kilowatt hour charger down the road, 150 kilowatt hour charger down the road. ID.3 can be charged up to 100 kilowatt hours or kilowatts, pardon me. And when plugged it in, it does this really nice animation. And so it was red at one end, and then it had all the little things. It was as if all these little things were marching from the right-hand side of the car to the left-hand side of the car. As a sort of, look at all the electricity running in. And as it fills up, then the steady state bit goes further and further from the left to the right, like a battery level indicator. And it turns from being red to being green. Mm-hmm. And it's like all the little electrons running in to join your battery, which I thought was really cool. And I know it's silly. And the funny thing is, this is such an austere car. Yeah. In so many other ways, it's such an austere car. And that, I really liked that. I really thought that was fun, and it really amused me. And I don't know if you can tell, I'm making a lot of fun of this car, but I did actually have quite an admiration for it in the week that I had it. I wouldn't say I liked it or I fell in love with it or anything like that, but there was lots of things where you thought, yes, I quite like that. Yes, I quite like that. That was one of those things. I really liked the idea. I thought it was phenomenally practical at times when you needed it to be practical, but it was also used in a kind of slightly whimsical way whenever you didn't need that absolute practicality.
Oh, good. So what about the driving?
Well, it drives.
Is this a bit like the exterior? It's sort of like, it's fine?
It is. No, it's perfectly good. It's smooth. It's comfortable. It's one of these cars where you have no particular compulsion to drive like a loony. Okay? You just want to get from A to B.
So it's a relaxing EV experience.
Phenomenally relaxing EV experience. Okay. It's very refined. Despite, me saying that some bits you feel that in some places corners have been cut, then I didn't have an issue with any of the NVH. It was very refined, very relaxing, got from A to B. When I was dodging around town and dodging around locally, perfect. Absolutely perfect. As I say, it's quick enough, even in this lowly spec. Much quicker than the e-Golf, which got me embarrassingly burnt off the. You're in an EV and you think, yeah, I need an EV, so I'll have you, little low-powered MG ZT, the little one, ZR. I'll have you. This is in the e-Golf. Put my foot down, just did nothing, and there's flipping tiny rubbish. It wasn't even a good one. Rubbishy little MG disappeared off. I was like, "Urgh." That was embarrassing because I'm not used to that. I'm not used to that happening with me. But this did no such issues.
Didumsy.
I know. I am such a boy racer, but they were dithering and I couldn't even get past them when they were dithering. Not an issue with the ID.3. Okay. Range I was getting. Now, I don't know if the one I had the heat exchanger in.
Okay.
It's about £1,000 worth of option if you want the heat exchanger, but it does make life easier in the winter. I was getting a range of about 165-ish miles on cold days, from full on cold days, uncharged. So I was going out into a cold car when it was 1 or 2 degrees outside, starting it up. And of course, it had to heat up the battery and it had to heat up the car and stuff. So it was a worst case of about 165-ish miles.
Okay.
Generally, if it said a mileage, it wasn't that far off. It maybe overread a little bit sometimes. I took it to London and back. I was getting about 180 odd miles, and that was sitting with the motorway traffic. That was not driving like a featherfoot person, because I knew I was going to have to stop and charge anyway.
Yeah.
So what difference did another five minutes make? For me, that at this smallest battery level was great for dodging around locally. It was a little inconvenient on longer trips.
Yeah.
So that slightly bigger battery, I mean, the next size up is a 58 kilowatt hour, getting just about 200 and something miles. You'll reliably get that. So I wouldn't have an issue with that. I think I would go one battery size up probably if I had my way. And that still would bring me in about £33,000. So probably just a bit over the grand.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be there. I charged a couple of times. I charged a few times during the week. One night I left it plugged in here. Bit of a shock when I came down in the morning reading £4 something on my smart meter. It was like, what? You're normally only about £1 something at this point, and then realized that actually it cost me £4 or £5 to just top up the car charge overnight, which was just fine. Not a big deal. Charging without a subscription at 150 kilowatt hour chargers can get expensive. I charged up to about 80% from sort of 10% or 15%. Cost me £12 something. But it only really took me the length of time it took me to wander around the M&S Simply Food, picking up my shopping and coming out, and then it was pretty much full. And I waited another couple of minutes, just let it go to the 80%. The nice things I found, and I'm starting to lapse into tech here, but it's also related, was that it shows you how many miles per hour you're loading. I was up to almost 200 miles an hour at one point, I think, possibly quicker.
How fast you were cramming electrons into the battery.
How fast I was cramming stuff into the battery, which I thought was really quite clever and really quite good. It was just nice. It just gave you a comparison, and it seemed to work quite nicely. As I say, I charged a few times. I'm very lucky here. I have a number of different charging places, different networks, different speeds available to me, and they're rarely full. There's like one in the middle of town, which is a right pain, partly because it's an older Polar one. It's also very convenient for the middle of town. So it's convenient for that. So loads of people want to use it. It's also an older Polar one, so it doesn't accept chip and pin. Contactless, which is a bit of
upgraded yet.
Hasn't been upgraded yet, and it's constantly in use. In fact, there really should be a second one there, but all the taxi drivers use it. But yeah, I didn't get a chance to use the Instavolt either nearby. I did charge at Milton Keynes Coachway again, which is a great facility. Loads and loads of chargers, really accessible, always stuff available, absolutely no infrastructure roundabout. It's just sucky, really.
So take your own flask and sandwiches.
It really better off taking your own flask and sandwiches. It's got to be better than the bus station cafe place, which is all right, but it's miles away and it's not wonderful. This time, let's not be a snob, Alan.
You've started to talk about tech.
I have. I had heard lots of horrible things about the current system in Volkswagen, in this platform and this generation of Volkswagen Group vehicles. So that's not just Volkswagen, that's also Seat, that's also Cupra, and not so much Audi, but definitely, and Seat, Skoda.
Because this was their big fanfare. We're doing our own software stuff, wasn't it? And this was a big project of Dice's, and that he kept shouting about it and saying it's going to be brilliant. And when it came out initially, there were issues.
There were challenges, but it's software. Remember, Alan works for a company that develops software and releases software, so I have a slightly warped
forgiving
issue. I am a little more forgiving of just about everyone apart from our own, to be honest. So yes, I'm a bit more forgiving. I found it fine. I didn't have an issue with the speed. I didn't find it lag too much. I didn't find any of these things at all. I actually preferred the VW nav to any of the CarPlay-based ones, partly because I liked the ID light telling me where I was going. I didn't do that with CarPlay or with Apple Maps or Waze. And I just liked the UI. The UI certainly for the nav was really nice.
Okay.
I liked it a lot. I had two complaints. One, when I was trying to release from an on-street lamppost-based charging in central London, the car had a bit of a tizzy and started telling me things weren't available until I sort of tried to work out how to basically turn it off and then on again, which was not wonderfully easy. Well, it was just a bit frustrating, and I was a bit worried that I was tethered to a lamppost in central London. When I came back to the car, I'd realised that charging unit was meant to be residence parking only and not actually available for every Tom, Dick and Harry who'd got up. That was my main concern about this was, oh no, I'm stuck and I'm not a resident. That was 5 minutes, but felt like 25. trying to get it to loosen the cable. And I had the same problem with the e-Golf, to be honest. They're the only two cars that have ever sort of got me feeling that, oh goodness, I'm locked to a charger. And my second complaint is it took quite a while to boot up in the morning.
Okay.
If you hadn't used the car for a couple of hours, it took a while for everything to come on stream, to connect to your iPhone, to connect your iPhone and CarPlay, to actually be really sort of useful and accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a bit annoying, especially if you're in a bit of a rush. You can need to put the thing in, the destination in. But then the voice control actually almost worked. I was pretty happy with that. Once it was up and running, I found it was just fine.
Okay.
I did find it was just fine. That wasn't an issue. What else? That's about it, really. I mean,
I take it it's got all the typical safety stuff one would expect.
Yeah. And again, that was another time. I didn't find the AEB overly sensitive.
Okay.
Didn't find the lane departure warning. Found the lane keeping assist really good. Usual story with the Volkswagen ones, it won't let you undertake unless you give an extra little, or accelerate past vehicles that are to your right unless you give an extra little tap of the throttle. Smooth and easy in central London. Sat quite happily on the motorway on the way down. Yeah, no issues with any of that stuff. One thing is that whenever the AEB does go, the ID light just like boom, red across. You can't miss it. And yet it managed to do that. It managed to bring up an icon, a significant icon on the small binnacle in front of you. And yet it wasn't irritating. And it wasn't ridiculous, and it wasn't overly sensitive, I didn't feel.
Okay.
It did it to me when I was weaving between cars and sort of keeping my foot down when you would expect to be lifting off. I feel it was perfectly within its rights and reasonable to do that. If I'd had a passenger in the car, I wouldn't have been doing the same thing because they would have been doing the thing. So I just looked on it as a passenger going beside me. So I didn't have an issue with that. Not a problem at all. Does that round it up? Is there anything you feel I've missed, Andrew?
Have you got any reaction from, or did anybody come up and ask about the car? Was there any reactions from your neighbours?
No, not from my neighbours, other than, it's one of those, is it? No, I was, do you know what? In central London, of all places.
Was this one of the residents going, "Oi, you've parked in our spot"?
No, I thought it was going to be. I was like, Fred had just bought something different, but she noticed me. She appeared just after it had actually released the charging cable so I could leave where I was. And I was standing at the back of the car, just coiling up the cable to put it neatly back in the bag and in the boot. And she came and said, "How'd you find it?" And I said, "Well, it's not my car. I'm testing it. I've got it for a week. So I've had it for a couple of days. So I'm trying to." And then she had the way, how did you find charging it? What do you think of it? And lots of that kind of stuff. Just, it was very obvious I was doing electric car things by disconnecting and coiling up cables. And that was kind of it. I think most people are getting there with EVs. I say I didn't have any issues. I mean, I guess it was kind of controlled circumstances. I knew that if I stopped at Milton Keynes on the way down, I'd have loads to get home again.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing. And I'd given it a little top up just in central London to just try one of these lamppost chargers. But it was only a 5 kilowatt hour, so it was really very slow.
Okay.
I should almost have parked in one of the undergrounds, which I know has charge points, but it was kind of convenient there. Mm-hmm. So I just did it and then realized I shouldn't have done. But no, I didn't have an issue with any of that kind of stuff. People weren't, I don't know. I just didn't have any questions or anything from people generally.
Okay.
There's one friend commented, "Why do they always have to make EVs so ugly? Why can't they just look like cars?"
Okay.
I comment about it. Why it's just trying too hard, etc., etc.
All right.
Noted opinionated person, mind.
Okay.
But yeah, so that was so.
So what did you think overall then? What was your experience of the car itself, and how a VW done?
I liked it. I think if somebody said, "Alan, you have to have this car. This is the car choice that you have to have as your day-to-day, everyday, daily driver," I don't think I would be upset. Not even at that spec level, by the way.
Okay.
I wouldn't be upset by it. I wouldn't be massively excited to have it. It's not possibly a car I would choose because I like stuff that's a bit different and a bit funky, and that's my problem. But it's the kind of car that I would recommend to others.
So do you think it was a good stab at reinventing the car of the people, or car for the people?
Yes, I think so. But I also think it's a first stab at it. And sure, the initial proof of concept was the e-Golf to just make sure stuff worked and that they could make transmissions work. So I think we said that at the time when I had the e-Golf a couple of years ago. I'll be very interested to see what the Mark II ID.3 is like. I think that would be a cracking car. And I actually think that some of the other Volkswagen brand vehicles based on the Cupra Born.
I'm interested to see what they do.
Equivalent Seat, name of which escapes me.
Yeah.
Then actually really interested in those. More interested in those having tried the ID.3 than I was beforehand.
Yeah.
I liked it. It's a car I admired. It's not a car I was like, "Oh no, it's going today. I really want to keep this." But it was a car. It was like, no, I have a lot of respect for that car.
Is it on the list now if people say, "Oh, I want an EV, but I'm not really into cars"?
Yes.
Like we used to do we'd say with the Golf, or we'd say with Hyundai Kia, if they're not particularly worried about a badge.
It's that, but if you're more of a badge snob.
Yeah.
Personally, I would prefer Hyundai Kia. I'd rather an Ioniq 5. That's where my money would go towards, or possibly even an EV6. But they're more expensive.
Yep.
And they're
larger as well.
And they're a bit bigger, but they're also a bit more polarizing. So yeah, it's on the list of cars what I would recommend to other people.
Okay.
And I wouldn't be upset to own myself in any way, shape, or form, and I wouldn't judge people harshly for owning them. And I judge people harshly for owning cars because I'm such a
we all do. We all do.
Such a prat. It is, but it is. It's a little bit of a car person thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, liked it a lot. Lots, as I say, lots and lots of respect for that as a car.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad that they've made a good fist of their first stab at a dedicated EV.
Yeah, me too. Liked it a lot.
Yeah. Cool.
Anyway, folks, if you want to know more about the weekly motoring news, don't forget between now and next time you can give us any feedback and share your thoughts with the show at Motoring Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, on Facebook, and on the contact page at motoringpodcast.com, the hub of all our activities. Please don't forget to leave a review and rating on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or however your podcast app lets you do such thing. Andrew, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch with me is via Twitter. If you search for Crack Windscreen, you should find me there. And Alan, if people would like to know even more about the ID.3, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you personally?
I've just looked at the runtime for this show before editing. And yes, I'm not sure there's much more that could be told. But the best way to get in touch with me is via Twitter, where I'm at AJP Bradley. That's Bradley. We'll be back before very long. But until then, I've been Alan Bradley.
I've been Andrew Clues.
And safe motoring.